Kevin got dared by his friends to jump down the infamous off-limits tunnel. Its barred entrance a challenge he couldn't resist. With a rush of adrenaline, he jumped into the dimly lit passage, the echoes of his voice against the concrete drowning in the eerie silence. Hours passed, and anxious whispers about Kevin's disappearance spread like wildfire through the neighborhood and his friends. Concerned, his friends combed the vicinity and alerted Kevin's mother. The tunnel's closure amplified their unease. Lydia, Kevin's mother, felt her heart sink into her shoes when his friends came to her. Her stomach turned, and her hands became clammy. "This can't be happening," she thought. She immediately ran to the tunnel and began calling for her son. "Kevin! Kevin!" she yelled frantically. Her daughter Sarah followed and also yelled for her brother, tears streaming down her face. Feeling helpless, Lydia called the police. They arrived shortly after and prevented anyone from leaving the area. They searched the area, but when they failed to find him, they thought of something else to do. Security cameras surrounded the area and captured every inch of it, so there had to be some footage of Kevin on there. The police officers brought Sarah, his sister, and Lydia into the security control room. The footage of Kevin was already playing on the screens. A tear rolled down Lydia's cheek as she watched her son's disappearance through the screen. But what exactly happened to Kevin? And will they ever find him? When Lydia, Kevin, and Sarah moved to the neighborhood, all seemed to go well. But Kevin kept doing things that Lydia didn't like. She just wanted to move on from her nasty divorce and make new memories with her children. However, Kevin didn't seem interested in that. She knew it would be difficult to keep an eye on both of her children, but she didn't want to deprive her kids of this experience because of that. So, she laid down a few ground rules. One of them was that her oldest daughter, Sarah, 14, had to stay with her younger brother, Kevin, 7, at all times, including when playing outside. Lydia thought it was a great idea for the family to spend some quality time together and go to the nearest water park. This is when everything started. The rule was, if they were to go to the water park, they must also stay together. But here, Kevin met some friends. There had been a slight struggle to get Sarah to agree with the rule, but Lydia booked the tickets as soon as they did, and they were off to the water park. The park was huge, with at least 6 different slides, a child section for the little ones, and other fun activities to do in the water. But there were also closed sections with closed-off tunnels. But with a huge water park also came a huge amount of people. Children were running around and climbing in and out of the water constantly. You could hear parents yelling for their kids to watch out, and there were only a few beds left for them to lie in. Suddenly, Lydia doubted if she had made the right decision. But Sarah and Kevin didn't even notice all the noise. Instead, they had their eyes set on the slides. "Sarah, do you see that?" Kevin beamed. "Come on, hurry up! I want to go off that big green slide." He tugged on Sarah's arm. All right," she sighed, giving a tired glance at her mother. Lydia watched her children disappear into the large crowd of people. She felt a bit nervous, but suppressed the feeling. She trusted her daughter and knew she would make the right decisions, or she wanted to feel that way at least. So, Lydia grabbed her book and began to read, totally forgetting about the time. A loud scream broke Lydia's concentration, and she bolted up. "Mom! Mom!" Sarah came running toward her mother with tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, what happened?" Lydia asked her daughter. Sarah panted and cried. Kevin!" she stuttered. "What is it? Where is Kevin?" her mother asked worriedly. "Sarah, where is Kevin?" Lydia asked again. She grabbed her daughter by the shoulders. "Where is he?" Panic started to rise inside her. "I lost him," Sarah cried. We were supposed to meet at the red slide because he wanted to go down one more slide before we headed back to you, but he never showed." Lydia felt her heart sink into her shoes. Her stomach turned, and her hands became clammy. "This can't be happening," she thought. She immediately ran to the slides and called for her son. "Kevin! Kevin!" Sarah followed her and also yelled for her brother, tears still streaming down her face. Sarah brought her mother to the slide where they were supposed to meet. She told her mother which slides they had gone down and which slides Kevin seemed to enjoy the most. They checked those slides first, but when they were still unable to find him, they began to search the whole park. Bystanders, as well as the lifeguards, sensed something was wrong, and they started to help Lydia and Sarah with searching. Soon, almost everyone inside the water park yelled for Kevin to come back, but there was still no sign of him. Hours passed by, and Lydia felt there wasn't more she could do on her own. Then some boys came, telling her they went to the off-limit tunnels. Feeling helpless, Lydia called the police. They arrived shortly after and prevented anyone from leaving the park. They searched the park, but when they failed to find him, they thought of something else to do. Security cameras surrounded the park and captured every inch of it, so there had to be some footage of Kevin on there. The police officers brought Sarah and Lydia into the security control room. The footage of Kevin was already playing on the screens. A tear rolled down Lydia's cheek as she watched her son's disappearance through the screen. Kevin walked away from the red slide where his sister was waiting for him and went somewhere no one expected him to go. Kevin told his sister he would go down one more slide before they returned to their mother. Sarah agreed and said he could go down the red one. But little did she know Kevin already had something else in mind, and it wasn't the one she had suggested. There was a bright yellow line that said, "Do not enter. Keep out." But that only made Kevin more curious. The boys he recently met dared him to jump into the tunnel. He stood in front of the tunnel for a few seconds and looked around to see if no one else was watching him. Then, when the coast was clear, he snuck under the line and disappeared. Lydia watched with her hand over her mouth. She never expected her little boy to do something so dangerous. "Where does that tunnel lead to?" she asked the lifeguard worriedly. The lifeguard didn't reply to Lydia's question, but she could see from his expression that something was wrong. Very wrong. "Ma'am, we need you to sit down for a moment," the police began. "We have to speak with the lifeguards in private before we can give you any more information. So, for the time being, we need you to stay here and wait." Lydia couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You want me to wait?" It felt like Lydia's heart was about to jump out of her chest. She sat down with Sarah and held her hand. "This is not your fault," she whispered to her daughter. "You couldn't have known he would do something like this." Sarah looked down and sighed. "This is the worst day ever." It felt like an eternity until the officers returned. They sat down at the table where Sarah and Lydia were sitting and looked at them with serious looks on their faces. The bright yellow line with "Do not enter" wasn't there for no reason, one officer began. He paused for a second. "You see, the tunnel wasn't done yet. It was supposed to be a new slide. There were still some pieces missing, and there was no water running through it." The officer continued. "But," Lydia responded, "you must know where it leads to, right? Can't you follow in my son's footsteps and go down the slide yourself? What if he is stuck somewhere inside?" "It's not that simple," the officer replied. "There are certain protocols we have to follow. For now, we need you to go home and wait for us to call. We have a good lead and will find your son very soon, but there isn't anything else you can do." Lydia disagreed with him, but agreed anyway. And so, she and her daughter went home and waited. Lydia's home echoed with the chilling emptiness of Kevin's absence. She paced the hardwood floors, shoes clicking a mournful rhythm. Every few steps, she paused, listening for the welcome ring of her cell. With every silent moment, hope dwindled, and fear crept in. The wallpaper seemed to taunt her, memories of a happier time. With every glance at the family portrait, her heart ached anew. In the adjacent room, Sarah sat, her face cradled in her hands. Tears traced their path on her cheeks. She muttered to herself, "It was my idea to go to the tunnel." She thought she would finally be alone if he went with the other boys. Ridden with guilt, she approached Lydia. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Lydia, lost in her thoughts, looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "We'll find him," Lydia whispered, trying to console her daughter. But the weight on both their hearts was palpable. Outside, as the sun set, the streetlights became the gathering spots for whispering neighbors. "Did you hear about Kevin?" one asked. "I can't believe it," another replied. Stories varied, from simple accidents to wildly exaggerated. But the common theme was the water park's tunnel, and the heartbreak of a family left waiting. By the next morning, the story had hit the local news. TV vans lined Lydia's street, reporters aiming microphones at anyone willing to speak. The park's management was put on the spot. "We ensure the safety of our visitors. We are cooperating fully with authorities," the manager claimed. But Lydia and Sarah, watching from inside, felt only the sting of media glare. The water park, once the pride of the town, had a storied past. Families flocked there every summer, the roar of laughter and splashing a constant. Old photographs showed children, joy evident on their faces. It was a haven of memories. But now, as Lydia and Sarah flipped through those photos, the park's golden days seemed like a distant past. Angry parents stormed the park's gates. They clutched their children tightly, vowing never to return. The once gleaming reviews on the park's website turned sour. "Not safe for kids," one read. "Think twice before visiting," warned another. The park, a symbol of summer joy, had now turned into a nightmare. Meanwhile, at the local community center, volunteers gathered. Maps of the water park and surrounding areas were spread out on tables. People marked possible routes Kevin might have taken. Hope and determination filled the room. "We will find Kevin," the coordinator declared. The town rallied, displaying the strength of community spirit. Sarah, now resolute, decided to take matters into her own hands. She gathered her closest friends, recalling the details of that day. "We have to search every corner of that park," she declared. Armed with a sense of purpose, they made their way to the water park, each praying to uncover the vital clue that would bring Kevin home. Inside the park, Sarah's group approached other children. "Have you seen Kevin? Do you remember the tunnel slide incident?" They gathered tales, pieces of a puzzle. One child mentioned seeing Kevin speaking to a ride operator earlier. The clue wasn't much, but it was a start, a glimmer of hope in their search. Lydia, filled with a mother's rage, marched to the water park's management office. Slamming her palms on the desk, she demanded, "Where is my son?" The manager, taken aback, began offering platitudes, but Lydia cut him off. "I need answers, not excuses." The tension in the room was palpable. The journey to find Kevin had taken a new, urgent turn. The sun gleamed brightly overhead, casting a warm glow over the water park. Kevin, with a beaming smile, splashed in the pool, his laughter infectious. Sarah playfully tossed water at him, their giggles echoing in unison. Moments of pure joy, building sandcastles, eating ice cream, racing down water slides. The day was perfect. No one could have anticipated the tragedy lurking ahead. Sarah and her friends began to dig deeper. Old news articles and posts hinted at previous minor mishaps on the blue slide. One child recounted a weird turn within the slide, while another spoke of a sudden and unexpected drop. Although no major incidents were reported, Sarah felt a nagging sensation that something was amiss. In the security office, a seasoned guard named Frank sat reviewing hours of footage. He paused, rewinding a particular segment. There it was, a slight glitch as Kevin approached the tunnel's exit. The footage was unclear, but Frank felt certain something wasn't right. He needed to share this with Lydia and the investigators. Sarah, armed with her findings, led Lydia to the park manager's office. "Why weren't we told about the anomalies with this tunnel?" Lydia's voice trembled with fury. The manager, cornered, hesitated, then admitted there had been minor issues, but nothing warranting a shutdown. Their confrontation grew heated, with both sides demanding answers. After seeing the video anomaly, the police decided to widen their search radius. The park was combed in meticulous detail, but now surrounding neighborhoods, woods, and shopping districts were included. They theorized Kevin might have wandered off, disoriented after exiting the tunnel. Each passing hour weighed heavily on Lydia. Once filled with hope, despair now consumed her. Sitting in Kevin's room, surrounded by his toys and drawings, she felt a crushing sense of loss. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched a teddy bear close, longing to hold her son again. While scouring the nearby area, Sarah stumbled upon a familiar toy store. Glancing inside, she noticed a toy truck identical to the one Kevin had taken to the park. Speaking with the cashier, she learned a boy fitting Kevin's description had been there earlier, looking lost. Hope surged within her. The police, acting on this new lead, brought in search dogs. They were given Kevin's clothes to catch his scent. The dogs, focused and determined, began their search, leading the team through alleys, streets, and parks. Each bark, each change in direction, was a beacon of hope for Lydia and Sarah. The town's spirit was evident everywhere. Lamp posts were adorned with missing posters showcasing Kevin's smiling face. Neighbors and strangers alike rallied, sharing information and joining search groups. The community was united in their goal, bringing Kevin home. Reporters took to the streets, interviewing passers-by. "Have you seen this boy?" Many shook their heads, but a few provided potential leads. An elderly woman remembered seeing a confused child at a bus stop. A shopkeeper mentioned a boy asking for directions. Every bit of information, no matter how small, was a piece in the intricate puzzle of Kevin's whereabouts. Every news channel was flooded with the story of the park's negligence. Attendance dwindled to an all-time low, and previous patrons took to social media, expressing their outrage. With every report, the once beloved water park now stood as a symbol of a parent's worst nightmare. Legal experts weighed in on the park's responsibility. With prior incidents and the current situation with Kevin, lawsuits loomed. Discussions of safety protocols and park's culpability became nightly debates. Lydia, torn between her grief and seeking justice, consulted lawyers about her next steps. The initial hope from potential leads often ended in heartbreak. A boy with a similar cap was spotted in a distant town, only to be identified as someone else. Another lead from a bus station turned out to be a false alarm. Each disappointment added layers to Lydia's and Sarah's anguish. The strain of the ordeal began to manifest between Lydia and Sarah. Arguments about the best way to proceed and moments of inconsolable grief marked their days. Despite the circumstances, a silent understanding began to form, a bond forged through shared pain and hope. While Lydia was distributing flyers, a man approached her. "I think I've seen this boy," he began. He recalled spotting a boy who looked confused, playing near a local playground. His account seemed credible, reigniting a glimmer of hope. Before the complexities of life took over, there were simpler times. Memories of family picnics, laughter at Sunday dinners, and Kevin's first steps played in Lydia's mind. The memory of her once complete family, before the divorce, was a bittersweet reminder of happier days. Though faced with setbacks, Sarah's determination only intensified. She spent nights mapping out possible routes Kevin might have taken, coordinating with search teams and chasing leads. Her undying hope was the beacon that guided many in these dark times. Hidden behind bustling streets and overlooked by many was an alley, aged and narrow. Graffiti painted its walls, and it was known to be a shortcut out of the park area. It was here that the tunnel's exit was rumored to be. The alley held secrets, and Sarah was sure it was pivotal in solving the mystery. With the mysterious alley identified, Lydia, accompanied by the police, went door to door in the neighboring areas. Each knock was filled with desperation and hope. Every interaction, every conversation, was a potential step closer to finding Kevin. The community, eager to help, shared stories, security footage, and any piece of information they could offer. One evening, Sarah sat with her best friend, eyes brimming with tears. "It's my fault," she whispered, the weight of guilt consuming her. The comfort her friend offered couldn't penetrate the wall of despair Sarah had built, but the act of sharing lessened its height just a little. Candles illuminated the park entrance as hundreds gathered, united in prayer and hope. Songs of comfort filled the air, and photos of Kevin were placed at the center of the vigil. The collective spirit of the community was a beacon, signaling to Kevin, wherever he was, that he wasn't alone. Lydia's phone rang, breaking the stifling silence. A voice on the other end spoke of a boy, lost and scared, matching Kevin's description. Heart racing, Lydia relayed the news to the search team. Hope surged like a tidal wave. Every second counted. With the location pinned, police cars, with Lydia on board, raced through the streets, sirens wailing. As buildings and trees blurred past, Lydia clutched her heart, praying that this time it would be Kevin. Arriving at a modest house, Lydia hesitated at the door. It swung open to reveal a kind-faced family, and behind them, a familiar little face. It was Kevin. Their eyes met, and the world paused. Huddled in his mother's arms, Kevin began his story. Lost, scared, and overwhelmed, he wandered around unfamiliar streets after the tunnel, each turn making him feel more lost. But the kindness of strangers, especially the family who found him, gave him hope. Sarah rushed in, and the room was filled with tears of relief and joy. The three embraced tightly, a bond once strained now stronger than ever. Words weren't needed. Their hearts spoke the language of love and gratitude. The incident left scars, but also brought lessons. The community became more vigilant. Parents held their children tighter, and the park underwent major safety checks. The ordeal was a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of unity. Gathered around the dining table, Kevin finally disclosed the detail everyone had missed. "The tunnel," he began. "It took me outside the water park." His words painted the picture of his journey, explaining how he got lost, trying to find his way back. The revelation was a crucial piece, making sense of the puzzle that had haunted them all,